Have you ever laid in bed alone with witches in your closet and hands reaching out to grab you from underneath your bed and thought to yourself, is this the scariest thing that's ever happened? It probably wasn't, but I'll tell you what is.
Blood red hair. A couple dressed nicely, ready for a Friday evening out, didn't notice a car sitting in the rain across the street, where a burglar watched and waited for them to leave, just like they left every Friday night at 9 p.m. They had not noticed him, but he noticed them. For the last few weeks he had noticed them, especially the homeowner's wife, a beautiful woman who always wore lots of jewelry, and never wore the same piece twice. Their home was huge, and although the thief got a strange feeling of fear from the home, he was sure it was well worth any amount of uncomfort for all the valuables inside, that would soon be his. As soon as the homeowners drove past his car and down the wet and rainy street, the thief wasted no time in rushing to the home's backyard. He carried only a small suitcase and a backpack. To his amazement, he didn't even have to break in. The back door was unlocked. He had entered the home so quickly, he didn't notice how afraid he had become until he was inside. It wasn't a fear of getting caught. It wasn't the thrill of the robbery. It was pure fear he felt inside that home. Everything he saw in that dimly lit home was eerie to him. High ceilings and bare walls that the thief was sure were alive and watching his every move. He paused and listened. He listened for the homeowners returning home. He listened for a motion alarm going off. Listened for small movements of a cat or watchdog. All he heard was deafening silence. He wanted to escape. He wanted to run from the home. But the promise of a big payoff was too much to run from. The thief made his way up the stairs. There were lights on in the hall. He thought the light would comfort him and relax him. But the light on the high ceilings and bare walls only made him dizzy and more afraid of the home. He proceeded with caution, as if he expected a monster to jump out and attack. He slowly crept up the stairs and reached the top. At the top he stared into a large mirror, watching himself and listening. The only thing he could hear was the pounding of his own heart. He was paralyzed with fear. He wanted to turn and run down the stairs and escape this evil home. No payoff was worth this agony. Instead, against all his instincts, he walked to the large bedroom at the end of the small hall. He could see a large dresser just inside the room. The smell of freshly sprayed perfume burned his nose. He quickly entered the room and opened the top drawer. His heart stopped pounding, and his head began to clear.
Jackpot,
he said to himself. There in the drawer was more jewelry than he could carry. Diamond rings, gold necklaces, platinum watches, all for the taking. He stuffed his backpack and small suitcase as fast as he could, with as many valuables as he could. Then he stopped, terrified. His heart began pounding again. He had let himself get relaxed and comfortable. He had let his guard down in this giant evil home. He stopped again to listen to the silence. This time he heard it. He heard the most terrifying thing anyone could hear in a home alone, especially when it's not your home. Someone or something called his name. It came from the basement, he could tell. But who was it? What was it? No one knew him in this town. No one even knew him in this state. But before he could think, it called to him again. His heart stopped beating, and then started pounding again. Was he dreaming? Was he asleep? Was this a nightmare? Then again. Then he heard footsteps coming up the basement stairs. He stood up without thinking, and stood in the doorway, looking into the hall. He knew he should run, but his body was paralyzed with fear. Then, again. And he heard the basement door open and close at the bottom of the stairs. He felt faint and dizzy, his heart pounding, ready to explode in his chest. He heard the thing at the bottom of the steps turn and start to walk up the steps. Now he couldn't run. The thing was coming up and blocked his escape route. Robert turned and opened the window in the bedroom to jump out and escape. But the drop was higher than he thought, and that escape was gone now. So he took out his gun and returned to the doorway facing the hall. He heard as the thing moved up the stairs. He watched in the mirror to see if he could see the person or thing climbing the steps. Robert waited terrified, with his gun trembling in his hand and the rest of his body paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. The window in the bedroom was still open and the rain was pouring in as the thing slowly proceeded up the stairs. Robert could see its blood-red hair in the mirror. Then he could see a face, the most horrible face he had ever seen in his life. A clown's face, yellow bloodshot eyes, sharp teeth, a evil grin, smeared makeup, and dried blood all over the face and mouth. It wasn't human. It was a real monster with fangs for teeth and claws for fingers. Robert! The creature called to him as their eyes met in the mirror. The monster had reached the top of the stairs, and Robert pointed his gun and pulled the trigger. The gun clicked and jammed and wouldn't fire. Paralyzed with fear, the gun dropped to the floor. The clown turned slowly and now faced Robert at the end of the hall. For a long time the clown just watched, smiling a horrible smile at Robert, while Robert stood paralyzed, unable to move, with his heart pounding with terror. Then the creature spoke. "Hello, Robert." The following morning, the police arrived at the home. They asked the homeowners questions about the previous night. They asked about the car across the street. They asked about reports of someone entering their backyard, and screams coming from their home. The homeowners calmly said they were out most of the night, and when they returned, nothing was out of the ordinary. When the police asked if they would like them to enter and check the home to make sure everything was okay, the homeowners refused. They did, however, request that the car that was parked across the street from their home be towed immediately. The car was towed, and to this day no one has come to claim it.
Thank you for listening, and remember, the next scariest thing to ever happen may just happen to you.
Created by Eric Supervillain Millen. Sound effects from freesound.org. Full list of sound effects at thescariestthing.com. Music by Kevin MacLeod. Incompetech.com.